over the past 2 years now, we saw a lot of helicopter footage coming out from the Russian-Ukrainian war, yeah, showing air assault operations, shot down helicopters, anti-tank missions, and standoff lob rocket saturation attacks. There's been a lot of those. We can pull a lot from this footage to say, well, this is how Russia operates the helicopter fleet right now in this conflict. But to really understand it, of how they acquired all these capabilities and how they really thought about using their helicopter fleet, we must zoom out and look at the wider context. And this is where this video comes in. Today I want to focus on the anti-tank mission profile of Russian helicopters. I'll incorporate the typical tactical elements to show you how this plays out in a broad textbook manner. But specifically, I will explain the basics of Russian helicopter air support, the reasons for Russia going anti-tank with helicopters, the advantages and disadvantages of helicopters in this role, the missiles and their use, as well as the employment basics and the firing, and then we will contrast this to the present fighting in Ukraine. Our longtime partner Thrustmaster is sponsoring this video. This all then will give you a comprehensive picture of why Russia operates a helicopter fleet with anti-tank capabilities. It does make sense for them. And then we'll also talk about why currently, as far as the footage tells us, these capabilities are highly situational and they're really acting way differently on a tactical level. For this video, I am pulling from a variety of sources, including primary sources from the Soviet Union that I found in the German military archive, courtesy of late East Germany. Now you may say at this point, hang on, that's a couple of years old. Yeah, isn't that out of date? To which the quick answer is no, yes, no. Going from the Soviet Union to Russia, the capabilities of the helicopter fleet was, well, it stayed largely the same. Yes, of course, there are tactical and technical innovation that is going to happen, which I will also account for in this video, but the overall employment of the operational helicopter fleet and on the tactical level remains informed by the very same broad principle as they have already set out during the Cold War. And it's in fact not just for them like this, it's also for NATO. Soviet and now Russian military planning, they always emphasize the employment of mobile, armored and shock-like breakthrough forces. There was always that need in this concept for a multi-purpose, fast and heavily armed helicopter that can independently support air assault missions, can escort highly mobile ground units, soften up adversary quick reaction forces that are trying to contain a break-in. And out of this emerges that requirement for a helicopter just like the Mi-24 Hind. Now, although there has been a trend towards this throughout the Cold War, we definitely see a growing tempo in this on procurement and equipping these helicopters just like so in the 1980s, where the confrontation, the non-nuclear confrontation with conventional forces once again became pushed to the forefront instead of a nuclear confrontation. Now, in the 1980s, the core of the then Soviet shock armies, so the formations that were exactly meant to penetrate, break through and then overwhelm NATO forces, they were all given direct support by at least one combat helicopter regiment, with then one helicopter squadron working at the divisional level and providing support there. Broadly speaking, there are then 4 stages for helicopter support with 3 types of support, from preparatory to direct involvement in combat. And they all mirror Russian military doctrine. For the assault and attack helicopters, combating tanks and armored vehicles was one of the main tasks. Thus we see the purpose for helicopters like Hind. Here is a platform that, while vulnerable, just like any low-flying aircraft, if short-range air defenses do exist, but this platform is able to deliver continuous close air support for highly mobile ground or air mobile assault units at a moment's notice. Specifically because of the closer tie-in with the army, it is also easier to tie into the operational and tactical planning than an air force, even one that, like the Russian one, is heavily centralized around what the army wants to do. We see this mobile and quick deployment of local firepower in the way that Soviet attack helicopters have emphasized running attacks with missiles, guns and rockets. They were optimized for this with weaponry and protection systems. While the West commonly associates the anti-tank task with long-range hover, shoot and scoot, the initial assumption was that the Soviet Union would use anti-tank guided missiles, so ATGMs, as part of an opening salvo at initially, let's say, 4,000 to 1,000 meters during an attack with the earliest types, followed by closer running in attacks with rockets and guns at, say, 1,500 to 500 meters. However, if this was true in the 1980s, we see that by the end of the decade, the anti-tank mission profile had definitely changed. NATO started to field mobile and armored reaction forces, which included sophisticated mobile air defense units, and manpads became a lot more common. And all of this was fielded by NATO in order to provide a counter to that very offensively minded Warsaw Pact force. And the Soviet experience in Afghanistan also detailed to them just how vulnerable helicopters were if they were caught out by air defense. Regarding the anti-tank profile, towards the trailing edge of the Cold War, long-range ATGM hover and shoot attacks became much more common in the Soviet and then Russian force. These kept helicopters outside the most obvious acoustic and visual ranges and, crucially, the short-range air defense system threat bubbles. We can definitely observe that the surgical hover, shoot and scoot attack is a definite part of the Soviet and then Russian tactical portfolio. Not just because of the weapons that exist, those are just the externality of the requirements, but because of how they are described in detail in manuals of the time for training and combat purposes, as well as the now Russian requirements to support armored breakthrough forces and prevent any sort of defensive reserves from rushing in, especially armored reserves. We of course see technical advances and tactical innovation all the time. Some of that also now in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Yet everything we see from this conflict that's going on right now in terms of the basic principles of helicopter employment, from ATGM attacks over to the standard of rocket lobbing that we see all the time, all of that is already laid out in these Cold War manuals. So what are the advantages then, and also the disadvantages of using a helicopter in an anti-tank role? The main advantages are mobility, maneuverability, tactical versatility, and the ability to carry a substantial amount of firepower, both precision-guided anti-tank missiles as well as dumbfire ammunitions. Helicopters can quickly change position, mask their approach, and pop up unexpectedly with an assortment of weaponry. As a support weapon to infantry and tank formations, the helicopter can quickly and effectively target new threats. Now, on a pure military economic cost-benefit analysis, provided that they stay at a safe distance, and there is a couple of caveats that we have to tick off, a pair of helicopters can, if equipped with several ATGMs, they can knock out a substantial number of armor and vehicles. This inflicts losses upon an adversary force not just in terms of destroyed tanks, but crucially by limiting their operational momentum, flexibility, maneuverability and initiative, and they curtail that adversary's ability to delay or curtail Russian breakthroughs, leading to more losses in material and ground. Likewise, their ties, so the helicopter's ties to ground units, can provide much better cooperation and integration with ground movements, and they can fulfill other roles as well. Of course, on the flip side, helicopters and crews are expensive losses in themselves. They are vulnerable if caught out by air defense systems like manpads or vehicles, especially those equipped with fast-firing cannons. The experience in Afghanistan and Ukraine shows how vulnerable helicopters are to such ambushes. They do require some shaping, some mutual support, and ground elements to also identify threats and targets, as well as tight cooperation, which all increase the cost and the complexity that is involved. This makes helicopters less useful as a means in themselves. Except for very specific mission profiles, you don't really get a benefit out of an attack helicopter unless you tie them directly into the ground operations. We can see this in the present war, where the Russian forces used helicopters initially just like Doctrine lays out, and as the war then started to grind towards a more static affair over the last years, they were mainly relegated to nuisance attacks, which are of questionable cost-benefit. But now let us go back to the anti-tank guided missile. Although much of this is transferable to other helicopters as well, we will just focus here on the Russian Mi-24 Hind. It can be set up to fulfill multiple mission profiles and remains, despite the introduction of some newer helicopters, it still remains the primary attack helicopter of the Russian armed forces, as it can also fulfill a wide variety of mission profiles. Initially, it carried 4 ATGMs in the wingtip pylons. In newer variants, 2 more could be carried in the outer pylons, and there are attachments for more missiles per station as well. An assortment of other weaponries can be added on top of this. Now, the primary weapon to engage armored vehicles and tanks is the anti-tank guided missile, or ATGM. Though with some differences, these missiles feature the same basic components. You have a shaped or tandem-shaped charge to penetrate and destroy armored targets. You have a control and systems block, including the electrical power and guidance systems, the fuel tank and rocket engine featuring a 2-stage burn. You have stabilizing wings and control surfaces for steering. You have a rearward radio receiver, and then of course also rearward facing flares for guidance assistance. If we look at the main missiles employed by Russia over the last decades, we can see 3 main trends. The introduction of tandem warheads to overcome new protection systems on armored targets, the greater range to stay out of the short-range air defense bubbles, and higher missile speeds to keep exposure time to a minimum even at longer ranges. Equally, we see a change from manual to semi-automatic and then eventually automatic guidance. Generally, the helicopter must maintain certain flight parameters for the successful employment of the missiles. Let's briefly go over the guidance modes to understand the different ways to get a missile from point A, the helicopter, to point B, the target. There are 3 guidance modes, with a technical trend nowadays towards fire and forget type of missiles. The first one is manual guidance, where the missile is steered by the operator manually into the target through commands passed down via radio signals. This is called MCLOS, Manual Command Line of Sight. This was the most rudimentary type of control in guided missiles and eventually became a backup. It is used during malfunctions of optical equipment, if there is a fault in the guidance systems, if the missile's own guidance gets disrupted, or especially in older systems in low light conditions like dusk. Then we have semi-automatic guidance, or SACLOS. Now this is somewhat similar to MCLOS, however, instead of steering the missile directly, what the operator does is he designates the target with his sights, and as long as he keeps the sight on the target, the missile will automatically steer towards that point that the sight is looking at through automatic guidance information of the missile. And as you slew the sight from left to right or up and down, the missile will follow that trajectory. So there is still some manual control involved. However, because the operator is not manually controlling directly the missile via control inputs, but rather the operator is controlling the sights, which then automatically relays the information to the missile, this becomes semi-automatic. Finally, and more recently, new missiles are able to operate near independently from the platform they are fired at. Though they may require some external input, they are able to lock on independently and or use target designators from the firing helicopter or even external sources, and they use that to home into the target. This has the added benefit that the firing helicopter does not need to send continuous guidance information. The missile just follows the target designation, and in very new missile systems, the firing helicopter may not always require line of sight to the target. But that is a more recent development, so we're not going to address it in this specific video. Now let's go over the basics of an attack, focusing on line of sight attacks, as these are still the most common one for ATGM use. We start from the basic employment guidelines, so positioning to the duties of the crew, and then we shall go to the firing. Most helicopters are able to fire their ATGM on the move or in a hover. For this, they must be at the correct speed, range, altitude, and have a clear line of sight to the target. When positioning the helicopter, the crew must consider 3 main issues: the firing arcs within their firing sector, the concealment to prevent early detection, as well as enemy defenses such as man-pads or self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. A free field of fire is established by positioning the helicopter in such a way that it has no visual obstruction between the launcher, the sights and the target. In the Mi-24, this requires the chopper to climb higher than optimal due to the bottom-mounted electro-optical and guidance control pod. Some helicopters fix this issue by having a top-mounted sight. Concealment comes in both acoustic and visual form. By keeping distance, the enemy is less likely to hear the helicopter, but can still spot it. As such, the helicopter keeps a distance and hides behind trees or buildings until it fires. It can also mask itself by staying in front of busy, dark backgrounds, like a tree-filled mountain slope, or even in front of trees and buildings that mask the clean silhouette. Generally, it is best to avoid a clear background, like the sky. By having the helicopter face the target, the smallest profile of the helicopter is shown. Protection against enemy air defenses comes by keeping an eye on the target area, maintaining all-around situational awareness, and by staying at distances of upwards of 3 to 4 kilometers, which is generally the extreme range for man-pads or even some anti-aircraft guns. IR jammers, exhaust suppressors, turbine bafflers, radar warning receivers, decoys, and more recently MAWS or missile approach warning systems also increase survivability once detected. If all else fails, armor plating helps protect the crew, and various systems have backup redundancies, but the aim is always to not get hit in the first place. Then let's talk about the crew. We have the pilot and the co-pilot gunner. The pilot flies the helicopter and commands the mission. The co-pilot gunner assists by preparing weapons and operates guided weaponry like ATGMs. Both crew members spot and identify targets and maintain situational awareness when the other one is busy. For ATGMs, the pilot steers the helicopter into the firing position. Only there, and once ready to unmask, the co-pilot gunner fires the missile through either a semi-automatic or manual control. Alright, time to put theory into practice. Today I am joined by AJAC pilot, who is in fact a real-life US Army Apache pilot, and we will demonstrate what I've been talking about in the Mi-24 module in DCS using this right here. Is this a sponsored segment? Yes, it's a short one. Let me guess, some pay-to-win mobile game. No, it's Thrustmaster. Oh, that's good. Carry on. So as I've been saying before I was so rudely interrupted, I am using Thrustmaster's T1600M, which is an excellent introductions joystick that you can use in basically all simulators that are out there. War Thunder, IL-2, DCS, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, you name it, it's got it covered. In fact, if you have a friend who plays DCS and knows how to fly the Apache or the Hind, and you have that itch to try the game, this stick right here is perfect. You can hop into the gunner seat, setup is easily done, and you will learn the basic commands fairly quickly. You can also get the module, so the Hind or the Apache module, at trial. It's free online. And I have added links in the description to Chuck's guides and also a picture showing my quick setup for this stick here in the Hind that you can mirror if you wish to do so. Now, Thrustmaster's high-end setup, we all know it, HOTAS, Warthog and all that good stuff, and it's great. But I think for the beginner, you are much better placed to get something like this, an introductory joystick. And it is March already. Oh yeah, it's March already. So this sets you up greatly for the summer vacation time. And you can get it standalone or with a throttle control here as well, or even the full flight pack including rudder pedals. I believe it has a great cost benefit for any newcomer to simulators. This is exactly what you need to get started and set out onto that path, on that journey really, to become a sim pilot. And it can be set up ambidextrously, which is great. It is extremely flexible for all simulators out there, and it leaves you with that room to upgrade later on if you stick around with sims. Yes, pun intended. Back in the day, this was in fact my go-to stick for many years. Basically all of my IL-2 flying was done with this stick, if you remember those videos, and it is still my backup. And you can get it via the link in the description. And if you put in my code on checkout, that will also kick back a few bucks my way at absolutely no additional cost to you, which is a very easy way for you to support the channel organically without any extra hassle and setting yourself up for flight simulators. All right, let's go. Yes, let's do this. Now let's demonstrate a firing of an ATGM in a Mi-24. For this, we assume all preparatory steps have been made. The helicopter is in position and we are weapons free. This process, while procedurally and technically different to Western systems, is overall similar in execution. In the Mi-24, the gunner uses the aiming periscope on the starboard side, set next to the control handle for missile or sight guidance, and the appropriate control panels. Looking down the sight, we go through the initial steps of identification, range estimation, and then firing.
It's on. Might be able to get 2 engagements on this run, so as soon as that impacts, you can shift. Good hit.
And shifting. Target acquired. Range. Aging.
Alright, turn outbound.
Once fired, semi-automatic guidance steers the missile to the target. We track it through the periscope, keeping the sight onto the target. Once the target is destroyed, we can duck back to cover and move to an alternate firing position. Alternatively, we can repeat the process from our position if we think that it is safe to do so. Of course, this is a very clinical example done in a virtual flight simulator, and it contrasts sharply with how it plays out in real life. If you compare this virtual scenario from real-life footage from helicopter attacks against armored vehicles, however, you will see that the basic employment is much the same. Of course, helicopters do not come alone. If you see one, chances are there's a second one around somewhere. This provides options and advantages to the crews, from the advantages you get in terms of situational awareness, to increased firepower, mutual support. So say one helicopter gets shot at, then the second one jumps in and suppresses or destroys whatever is doing the shooting to the first helicopter. And of course, we also have the whole hunter-killer cooperation where one helicopter identifies, tracks, and then calls out targets for the other one to be in the position to fire and then taking out the target. This can be, but doesn't always have to be coupled with automatic guidance systems like, for example, laser beam riding or fire and forget infrared imaging or even radar homing missiles. Depending on the system, the firing helicopter may not even require line of sight, as long as the missiles can be handed over to external or independent guidance systems. Only the most modern missiles nowadays do this. One example from Russia is, for example, laser beam riding 9M121 Vickers, or from the West we have a lot of systems there, like Hellfire and Spike can do it, and yeah, we'll definitely see some advances in this category very, very soon as well. But now we must tie this, admittedly very basic demonstration, into actual combat operations. It is only once the war of movement exists that the helicopter can actually be exploited as both an air assault and an air support platform. If you're just plinking away at an adversary, and we see some of this in this footage from this present conflict, yes, helicopters are going to be inflicting losses here and there, but they're not taking part in combat that can really change the operational picture of an area. So to put it simply, if you're using a single helicopter in nuisance attack, that is basically an admission that the helicopter is not doing what it's meant to do. Massive shout out here to all the patrons and channel members for their support, and a big thank you also to Thrustmaster for sponsoring this video. Make sure if you're getting a Thrustmaster kit to check out with the code MA, and that would be absolutely super appreciated from me. And also big thank you here to Andrew for help on the script. Now I have a couple of Patreon questions here as always, so let's get into them. What's the more reliable source of income? Well, if I were to rank it, roughly speaking, I would say in terms of reliability, channel supporters are #1, most reliable. Then actually comes YouTube, then comes the publishing currently, because the publishing house is currently starting up and we're still in an early phase, and then comes sponsorships. And yes, I say that on a video that's sponsored, but yeah, that's the ranking. Then in terms of longevity of aircraft, how long do they stay into service and why? Well, basically, capabilities that are unique and do not require to be updated, those aircraft tend to stay in service for the longest. Yeah, it's always a question of cost benefit. What's the benefit of replacing this, given you have to invest a lot of money in finding that first-hand replacement? So aircraft like, for example, the B-52 or transport fleet aircraft, tactical airlift over to strategic airlift, those aircraft are going to stay around for a long time because there's simply no cost benefit necessarily to replace them in the current environment. Why develop a plane that does exactly the same than the one you already have? With fighter jets, that's a little bit different. And then the final question, am I going to do something on the Heinkel 177? Yes, I know I've promised this a couple of times and it is on my list. It's just that I am planned out until like July this year already. It's an incredibly busy year this year for me. Like so many things are happening, but I will get on that video. I have to indulge in your patience. All right, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for the questions of patrons and channel members. And as always, have a great day and see you in the sky.